Dennis Lushbough Jr., known as Jay to those who loved him most, was a 44-year-old from Iola, Kansas. He was an only child and worked in construction. On Sunday, August 14th, 2017, Dennis and his girlfriend were allegedly coming back from camping. They got into a fight, and the girlfriend got out of their van. She stormed off as Dennis drove away. He was never seen again. I'm Ed Densel, and this is Unfound. Do you remember the final time you saw someone? I don't necessarily mean that the person died. In fact, I know I don't mean that. What I mean is a person you graduated with. Then you went separate ways and your paths now never cross. The coworker who moved on after getting a promotion. The next door neighbor who moved to the other side of town. And you never hear from these people again. It's like they disappeared. You went from seeing these people almost every single day. You knew their children, their partners. You knew their idiosyncrasies, those things that make them, them. You laughed and cried with them. Then, nothing. No calls, no emails, no texts. But it's not because everything you and they experienced together was fake. Not at all. Instead, and truthfully, people move on. They find new friends. And really, you move on as well. Yet there is that emptiness. But my impression is this kind of feeling of a void goes away eventually. Yet, as we know in real disappearances, the void is never ending. The emptiness is excruciating. Nothing, including time, cures it. That is certainly true with Jay Lushbough, a man who struggled with many issues, both mental and physical. That he was gone, and his family is left to wonder what exactly happened at last sight. And now a summary of the case. This is brought to you by my friend Megan Good's website, charleyproject.org. Jay Lushbough was an only child. Yet he was the opposite of what we typically think of children being raised by themselves. He was a caring individual who even took on the role of father for the son of one of his ex-wives, and filled that role for over 10 years, energetically from what his family has said. Yet, Jay had his problems. He developed a meth habit after offering to try it simply because he was curious. A few years later, Jay fell from a roof, suffering serious injuries. This led to an opiate addiction on top of the meth one he already had. Jay ended up going on disability, and his family states he was at his lowest point near the time of his disappearance. So on Friday, August 12th, 2017, Jay and his girlfriend, Alexandria, set out for a weekend of camping on the Neosho River. Admittedly, the main activity on this trip would be taking meth since they were both addicts. The area where they would set up their tent would be close to Alexandria's sisters. The address, 22200 Harper Road, Chanute, Kansas. Friday turned into Saturday. Then Sunday, Jay and Alexandria decided to go back to Iola. On the way, according to the girlfriend, the two got into a fight. Since they were near her sisters, Alexandria demanded she be let out of the vehicle. Jay obliged her, then drove away alone. He was never seen again. 10 days later, a farmer found Jay's van on his land, near the intersection of 1700 Street and Arizona Road, approximately 5 miles from the sisters. Nothing seemed to be amiss, although some of Jay's possessions, including a grill, were on the ground next to the vehicle. Small searches of the immediate area revealed no signs of Jay. Disappearances are always difficult to analyze when we must take the word of one person in regards to the details. This is even tougher to do when the witness in question is an addict whose recollection and motivations may be suspect. Thus, questions remain. Number 1. Why is there still a discrepancy as to who and how many people were on this camping trip? Number 2. What are we to make of Alexandria's statement that she gave Jay a hot shot right before they left for home that Sunday morning? And number 3. How should we analyze Alexandria's theory in which she implicates her own sister in Jay's disappearance? Jay's family is hopeful that he is still alive, although they realize the facts of his disappearance point in a different direction. The guest for this episode is Jay's mother, Charley Russell. Unfound news. How is everyone out there handling this self-isolation stuff? Me, I'm doing fine. The last 10 days or however long it has been haven't been much of a change in my daily routine, except for trivia nights are canceled and I can't visit the local Starbucks. But for many of you, I'm sure your schedules have been greatly upset, and I'm sure some of you have lost your jobs. I want you to know that I believe better days are ahead. We will not allow this microscopic enemy to rule our lives and control our destinies. Next, as you might have expected, my interview at Nova Southeastern University has been canceled. The good news is that I am sure the interview will happen eventually, just like my suspended speaking engagement in Louisiana, but not until the fall semester when hopefully everybody can get back to a sense of order. In addition, I am currently in some discussions with other universities regarding presentations that I hope will take place later in 2020 as well, once again when we all get back to normal. Finally, I am requesting, demanding that all of you go to the new website, theunfoundpodcast.com. We want your comments and insights on the website so we can make it the best true crime one out there. We can only do that with your help. You can send all website ideas and questions to unfoundpodcast@gmail.com. Once again, the new website address is theunfoundpodcast.com, where you can find Unfound. Unfound supports accounts on Podomatic, iTunes, Stitcher, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Deezer, and Facebook. On Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Eastern, please join us on the Unfound Podcast channel on YouTube for the Unfound Live Show. All of you can talk with me, and I can answer your questions. There will be no business section in these episodes as long as the COVID-19 pandemic exists. There are too many people out there losing their jobs right now. Thus, it doesn't feel right for Unfound to indulge in money-making promotions at this time. The section will come back once everything returns to normal. I'm so happy to have on this episode of Unfound the mother of Dennis Ray Lushbough, Charley Russell. Charley, welcome to Unfound.
Hello.
Let's start here. Of course, your son's legal name is Dennis Ray Lushbough, but you call him Jay, and that's how we're going to refer to him during this interview. Why does he have the name Jay?
Because his name is Dennis Ray Lushbough Jr., and while I was carrying him, I would write JR down for Junior, and it just stuck with me. We started out calling him JR, and it was shortened to J.
And so
over the years.
So he was called Jay from a little boy, little kid, 3 years old.
Yes, all his life.
Okay. How did he feel about that?
He did not like it when he got older.
Huh.
He wanted to be called Dennis because that's his father's name.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay. And what did
when he got older, he wouldn't let some of his friends call him Jay. They had to call him Dennis. It was confusing.
Okay. All right. So you, as his mother, called him Jay, but you're making it sound like his friends, other people who knew him outside of the family, just called him by Dennis.
Some of them called him Jay. I think the ones that were raised with him, and then as he got older, the ones that worked with him would call him Dennis.
Okay. All right. And I thought it was important the listeners understand that because we're going to refer to him as Jay during this interview. So now that we've got that all sorted out, how many children do you have, including Jay?
He's my only child.
Only child. I don't think that I knew that, Sherry. Okay. Well, I was raised as an only child as well, so I know a little bit about that. Let's talk about that. What are those qualities that you think of when you think about Jay as, as a young boy to becoming a teenager? What was he into, his personality, hobbies, things like that?
Oh, he was a very, very caring child. For an only child, he was so responsible. He always watched out for the kids that were around him and made sure they were safe. He was just a really caring, loving little boy.
Okay.
And everybody pretty much liked him.
Okay. I know, once again, being raised as an only child, the listeners know that I eventually found out that I had two brothers and a sister. That's a long story, not meant for this program. But as a child, being an only child, did he make his own fun? Or did he have, neighbors, kids that he could play with? Or, what went on there?
Well, both. He could entertain himself for hours. He was never a problem. But I had two nieces and a nephew who were at our house a lot. They spent every weekend with us, and basically I raised them like they were his brothers and sisters and tried to get that bond going because I knew he wasn't going to have any brothers and sisters of his own. Mm-hmm. And then we had neighbors who lived in a small town in Kansas, and so there were boys around, and they were always outside playing ball or building forts or whatever boys do, always.
Okay, and did you kind of live out in the country or a little in a town, or where'd you live?
We lived in a town, but it was a very small town. Okay. There were, I don't know, about 1,000 people, maybe.
That is small, sure. Okay. As a boy, what kind of hobbies did he have? You already mentioned maybe playing baseball, but what other interests did he have?
That was his big interest, was baseball. He liked a lot of things. Music, he really, for a long time, he was so into Prince. Prince was the big thing for him.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But he was always a worker. Even, he liked being outside in the yard doing yard work, even when he was little, tiny.
Okay. So I guess we would say a little bit opposite of me. Okay. All right, what about his education? He went to high school, and how did he do in school?
He was an average student. He didn't excel probably in anything. He didn't. But he did good, and he graduated from high school, and then was in the Navy. Oh,
so he was a veteran?
He was in the Navy for about 2 years. I think he did the short.
Okay. Well, 2 years, I think.
2 years.
Okay, so the 2 years is the minimum, and how did he like that? Was that something that he liked, or do you think he was happy to get out after 2 years?
Oh, I think he was happy to get out after 2 years. He didn't hate it, but it wasn't something he wanted for a career.
Yeah. Okay. And what did he do after that?
Let's see. He was a laborer. He went back to the small town that he grew up in and went to work in a pallet factory. there aren't very many businesses there, so you're pretty limited. But
Right.
he liked physical labor. That's what he liked. And he eventually ended up working in concrete. He loved that, just being a laborer. That was good for him. He liked it, and he was good at it.
I guess that kind of
so
went
he
along.
did concrete work for a long time.
Yeah, I guess that kind of goes along with you saying even as a little boy you liked to do yard work and everything. I guess that was just in him.
Mhm.
Okay.
It was. He always was outside. He never stayed in the house a lot.
Okay. All right. So he was a laborer working in concrete, the pallet job. He went into the Navy for 2 years after high school, and I'm guessing he got out of the Navy when he was like maybe 21, 22 years old, something like that.
I think he was 20 when he got out.
Well, okay, very young. All right, so he put in his 2 years, got out very quickly. What about his relationships? We, of course, are going to talk about his current girlfriend, the woman in his life. Eventually, her name's Alexandra, but were there any women before that, any notable women that you can talk about, and did he have any children?
He did not have any children of his own. His second marriage was to a woman that had a child. He was married the first time for just a short time, and when that stopped, ended, and he married a woman that had a 4-year-old, I believe. He was 3 or 4 years old. They were together probably 11 years before they split. And so he raised her little boy, so that was his child.
Yeah.
And then they split. And so...
Yeah. How was that? How was that? Was that how was that tough for Jay, being that the child was 4, so they were together 11 years? You know, this boy would be 15 when they broke up. How did Jay handle that?
Not very well. He was just about the same age that Jay's dad and I split, and so you had that age thing going on, and it wasn't good. It was very hard on him. Him and his wife would get back together periodically, but of course it never lasted. But it was really hard on the little boy because that's the only daddy that he knew at that time.
Yeah.
And Jay was very good with him. He played baseball with him and had him in sports, and he raised him. He cooked for him. He dressed him. He did the laundry. He cleaned the house. Wow. And worked a full-time job.
Yeah.
And so, yeah.
Well, if you could say, if you remember, maybe approximately what year do you think that they got divorced? Do you know?
They were separated for many, many years before the divorce, so I'm not too sure. I really don't remember.
Okay.
They were probably married 20 years legally. But they just weren't together that long.
Oh, I see. So when you say 11 years, you mean that they were together, they were married for 11 years, and they continued to be married, but they went their separate ways. And then, and so there was about 9 years there of going back and forth and never doing the paperwork, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Did Jay keep in contact with this, young man, this teenager, after they broke up, or what happened there?
They did keep in contact, but not close contact. His son was in Kansas City. He went back. He came here to Arkansas for a while, kind of just, and then he'd go back to Kansas. Jay was just not settled after that marriage. He never did settle down for more than a couple years at a time.
Okay. And where were they? Were they living, like you said, in this small town of 1,000 people? Is that where Jay and this woman were married, and that's where they lived?
They were married in the small town, but they eventually moved up towards Kansas City, a small town close to Kansas City.
Okay.
I think it was called Spring Hill, Kansas, and that's where they spent most of their married life. Okay.
Now let's talk about the woman that he was with when he disappeared. Her name is Alexandria. We're not going to get into any last names here, but Do you know how they met? Did you ever meet her? Let's just go through the generalities, the general info of the relationship. You know, do you know how they met?
They met through friends in southeast Kansas. Probably, you have three little small towns close together. So the ones that, they were kind of in the same crowd, and became friends and knew each other for 12 or 13 years before they actually got together. They were just friends and would talk. Yeah. If she had trouble, she'd call him and he would talk to her. She started her drug use when she was about 15.
Wow. All right, and we're going to get into that. Okay. So what year would you say it was when they actually started being an official, more than platonic couple, approximately? Any idea?
About a year and a half before he went missing.
Wow. So let's just roughly say 2015 then, roughly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, that sounds about right.
How did you feel about that? Did you meet her? What did you think of her?
I didn't meet her for a while. I was always happy when he had a woman in his life and was happier and more settled. But I didn't really know her. I only met her a few times.
Okay. And we have to remember, maybe the listeners should know that you live in the state of Arkansas, and they were living in Kansas, so those two states are not next to each other. So it's not like you were seeing him all the time. Maybe you just kept in contact over the phone.
We did. For a long time, we spoke every week. Most of his life, he did not live super close to me, but we were always close and spoke on the phone. He always came home for holidays and anything, every time he had a chance, he came to see me.
Okay. So
we saw each other off and on through the year, probably 5 or 6 times a year, but we spoke every weekend.
Okay. During that year and a half that Alexandria and he were together, how would you say the relationship was? Once again, the only thing that you would know about it maybe is what he told you, but how did he feel about the relationship when you did talk to him?
Well, I didn't feel real good about the relationship. They were not good for each other, but they argued a lot. He was usually upset with her for one reason or another anytime I was around the two of them.
Okay.
They each had their roles that they played in their relationship.
Yeah.
He was the money provider, and she was a real needy person, and he liked that in women.
Okay.
That he could take care of them. Okay.
Let's move on to this, and once again, as I always remind the listeners, the reason we talk about something like addiction is because we do know that addictions and drugs can cause disappearances. That's the only reason. We're not trying to dig into a missing person's personal life to find out every secret or anything, but we do know that drugs and that illegal business can cause disappearances sometimes, so that's why we have to talk about it. But Jay did have an addiction that he struggled with. How long did he fight it? And do you remember the first time you realized that your son was into that?
Oh, gosh. Geez. When did I realize? I'm sorry. Probably about 20 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. He started seeing a woman that was addicted. And, of course, he hid it from me for a while, but I found out. And when they continued to be together, it was quite obvious that he was starting to become addicted to meth.
Wow.
Yeah, so meth was in his life for a very long time, off and on.
Okay. And during that time, let's just say you said 20 years ago, so we're doing this interview on March 19th, March 19th, 2020. So we'll just say that the year was 2000. Over those years before he disappeared in 2017, did he seek counseling? Did he seek treatment,
rehab, anything like that over those years?
He did come to live with me at one point. I knew that he was addicted, so part of the agreement was that he would go to counseling and go to meetings, and he did do that for a while, seemed to help. But then suddenly he stopped the meetings and stopped the counseling, and it was obvious that he was heading the same direction again.
Okay. And how did that affect the work that he was doing? You talked about him being a laborer, working in concrete. While he, when he got into that, was he able to maintain his work schedule and job, or what happened there?
Oh, he continued to work.
Okay.
That never interfered with his working, never.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good. All right, so he took on this addiction. Sounds like he was led into it by a woman back 20 years ago. Was this the same relationship, same woman that had the son, or was this a different woman?
This was someone he met after their separation.
After the separation. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So he was struggling that. And in your opinion, given what you knew about him, talking to him, although you were not seeing him that often, how bad would you say his addiction was at the time around his disappearance?
Around the time of his disappearance, it had engulfed him.
Had it?
It was everything.
Wow.
My relationship and his relationship had gone really bad. I had to cut him off and not give him money. I told him he was living with me a year, probably 2 years before his disappearance, that I had to tell him, you can't live here anymore, because he was doing the things that addicts do. He was stealing from me and lying and those types of things, and then he was angry at me because I was helping him. He was just very angry with me.
Okay. Yep, we hear that a lot on Unfound. That's certainly true. That these types of drugs, whether it is meth, or we've talked about heroin, we've talked about cocaine, we've talked about opioid addictions, and they seem to all lead in the same direction to a lot of the things that you just mentioned there. It is certainly true.
Yes, and he had an opioid addiction also in the midst of all of this because he had so many surgeries.
Right, let's talk about that. That leads us to the next thing. He had an injury at some point. It sounds like a severe injury to me, but you can tell the listeners about it, that he fell off a roof. When did that happen? How did that happen?
He was in Arkansas, living in Arkansas, and he worked for a lumber company, and they had delivered roofing material to a house, and he was stacking it on the roof of the house and fell. And when he did, he caught himself with the board with his hand, and it tore his rotator cuff. He hit the ground.
Wow.
And so he had a surgery for the rotator cuff, and of course they give you pain pills afterwards.
Yep.
And maybe a year later, he kept having trouble with his back and ended up having a couple of vertebrae operated on. They put a plate in his back, and then he had trouble with his hands and ended up with carpal tunnel in both of his hands and had surgery on those. And after that, he had another rotator cuff surgery on the other shoulder. And these all happened probably in 2.5 years. So he had a lot of opioids thrown at him.
Yeah.
Within a short time. So of course that led to buying any kind of a pill he could get off the street, along with meth when he could get it.
Mm-hmm. When would you say that this roof accident happened? How long ago?
I wish I had thought about that. That was probably 10 years, I'm going to say.
10 years ago. All right. So he has this injury on top of his addiction, then that takes us into the opioid addiction, which once again is probably the most, that I have to admit off the top of my head, probably that and meth addiction are probably the two we talk about the most. It seems when drugs do come up in disappearances, and as you probably would know, drugs are a conversation we have in many of the cases we cover on this program. So you had these things going on, these injuries, all these injuries in 2.5 years. And so I'm guessing he wasn't able to work during this time. I mean, it sounds, if you're doing you're a laborer and you have a rotator cuff injury, it sounds to me like that would certainly get in the way of being able to do anything.
He was not able to work after that. That was when they did the surgery, the first surgery on the rotator cuff, they told him he'd never be able to do that kind of work again. It was torn so badly it looked like it was 70 years old. They couldn't put it back together.
Oh my.
The tear was so bad. Wow. And so he eventually ended up on disability.
Okay. All right, and we have to remember he was 44 years old when he disappeared in 2017, so when this all happened, he was still in his 30s. I would say somewhat of a young man.
Yes. It was very hard on his pride.
I bet. I don't...
He pretty much lost his purpose.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. Certainly. Okay. So, yeah, that happened on top of everything else. And so he was on disability. Would you say that he was on disability at the time of his disappearance in 2017?
Yes, he was.
Okay. So let's move up. So that was roughly 2010. We know about him meeting Alexandria in 2015. So let's even move up closer to the time of his disappearance. Something that you had told me. I don't know if you personally saw this, for your own eyes, but you can tell the listeners how you knew this. But Jay seemed to have an issue with falling down or having problems with his balance. How did you know about this, or how did you find about this? How bad was it?
It had gotten pretty bad. The lady that he and Alexandria lived with, which is an older lady, called me and said, you might want to come see him. He's falling down a lot. He was just... he had a lot of nerve damage to begin with from the back surgery, which made him a little bit awkward. He didn't walk right after the surgery. And then with, his nephews taking over everything, he got to where he was just stumbling over things and stumbling over his own feet. When I would talk to him, he would sometimes say, yeah, I fell the other night, that type of thing. But it was bad enough for her to call me and say, you might come to town and see if you can figure out what's going on with him.
Do you think that this woman, this older woman that was there, did she know that he had a drug addiction?
Yes, she knew.
She knew. Okay. And being that she was seeing this firsthand, was she thinking it could be attributed to the drugs, or did she think it could be attributed to something else, just from what she saw? Any idea?
She didn't know. I think she was basically thinking it was the drug.
Okay.
But I think that's one reason she called was, for me to come down and talk to him and see what I thought.
Yeah. And so did you go over there? Did you see Jay? Did you talk to him?
I did travel to Kansas, and he was really, really high on drugs. He had gotten scabies, and he wasn't right. I could tell he wasn't right. And I took him and Alexandria to the park, and talked to him, and said, you have to stop. You're going to die. Yeah. I don't want to have to bury you. You're going to die. it was obvious that he was just gone. The Jay that I knew wasn't there anymore.
Yeah. And what would he say? I mean, of course, Alexandra is not your daughter, but so you really can't control her actions. But Jay is your son. What did he say to these things when you try to talk some sense to him?
Well, she understood.
Mm-hmm.
When I asked, "Are you doing meth?" she readily admitted yes, which made him angry because he thought he was keeping it a secret. And so then, of course, he became angry with her because she told the truth. But she basically did not lie, and she was like, "Yeah, I know, but, we don't do it that often." So she lied there because they were doing it daily until the money would run out. It was an everyday occurrence.
Of course. Would you say when this woman called you and you went to see him, was that the last time that you saw Jay before he disappeared?
I'm sorry, I didn't understand the question.
Okay, no problem. I'll ask again. When you went to see them and when the three of you went to this park, was that the last time you saw Jay, or did you see him after that?
I saw him after that. I stayed in town 3 days so that I could be around him, and so I saw him every day that I was there.
Okay. And when was the last time that you did see him? And we'll talk about the last time you spoke to him. But the last time you saw him, of course, he disappeared August 13th, 2017. When was the last time that you and he were together?
It would have been sometime in June that year, right before he went missing.
All right, so a couple months.
Yep.
Okay. So you saw him, and you tried to talk some sense to him, but he was still in denial about even his addiction at all. Of course, it sounds, though, to me that Alexandra was being honest with you. And so he wasn't working. He had this addiction. Sounds like he was in a very dark place. Sherry.
Yes, he was in a very dark place. Any addiction will take you. What is it they say about it? It'll take you to the moon, but it'll take you places you don't want to go.
Yeah.
And she said that to me. It takes me places I don't want to go.
Okay. During this time, let's just say during the year of 2017, were there any other people in Jay's life who could talk, maybe tried to talk to him about his addiction, maybe talk some sense to him? Any friends or any other family members? I don't want to jump too deep into this, but you have not mentioned his father at all. Anybody that else that was trying to talk some sense to him?
Actually, he was pretty much isolated from everyone in the family by the time his addiction got this far. His father and him did not have a close relationship. They lived in the same town but did not even see each other as far as I know.
Okay.
So that was just not a good relationship.
Okay. When was the last time that you spoke to him on the phone? Last time you saw him was a couple months before he disappeared. When was the last time you actually any other kinds of communication with him?
Probably the week before he came up missing.
Okay.
We were still trying to communicate every week. Sometimes that didn't happen, but most of the time it did.
Okay. And when you talked to him that week before he went missing, did he ever mention that he and Alexandria were of course, we're going to get into all this, but did he ever say anything about that coming weekend, like they were going to go camping or they were going somewhere? Did he mention that to you at all?
No.
Okay. All right, so let's move up right to this weekend of August 13th, 2017. So you didn't know that they were going camping, but maybe since then you found out, was this something common for them to do? Did they always go to the same place? I think everybody will understand that, they were going to be doing this and, of course, continuing to do their drugs, but was this something common that they would jump in the car and go someplace like they did that weekend?
Yes, it was common. They went to this particular spot a lot. In that area, that particular spot is used by a lot of the addicts. It's out in the country. It's on the river. It's just a small area, and so it wasn't used for fishing very. It's not used for fishing very much. It's just kind of a little party spot, but not. I don't think a big gathering for the most part. Okay. It's where you can be kind of isolated.
Okay. And the listeners should know by the time that they're hearing our voices for this interview, I will have, published a map with Google Maps, showing approximately where, once again, we're going to get into this, but approximately where people believe they were camping, where they were that weekend, although we can't be sure. But I will be using a Google Maps to kind of diagram everything for the listeners, and that will be posted on Facebook and elsewhere so people can use that map, to look into all of this. So, and what is the river? Maybe you just need to tell the listeners, what river is this that they would have been camping near?
The Neosho River.
Okay. And my understanding is this area was also near where Alexandria's sister lived?
Yes.
Very near.
I think about a mile and a half or something.
Pretty close. Okay. And that will come up later. So the listeners should know that we only have one person's version of the story for this weekend, and that is Alexandria's. And maybe we shouldn't be surprised that her story has changed over time. That could be suspicious, or it could just be a factor of her being an addict like Jay is. But what does she say went on that weekend from the time they left wherever they were living to the time that Jay disappeared? What has she told you, and what has she told authorities?
Originally, she said that they were out there at the river, camping out, partying. And he came up missing on Saturday night, the night before he came really missing, but he came up missing Saturday night. Some men in a truck pulled in that she didn't know, and she told them that she didn't know where he was, and they went down the river looking for him, could not find him. So when they got back to their truck, they left. And then about an hour later, Jay came kind of walking back into the campsite. Said he fell asleep, leaned up against a tree and fell asleep. Mm-hmm. And then the next day, they were heading home, and she said he was driving erratically in circles, made her angry, so she told him to let her out of the vehicle, and she would walk to her sister's house. And the last time she saw him, he was heading down the road, the highway, and she never saw him again. And while she was walking to her sister's house, she got picked up by the police for an existing warrant. And so then that night she spent in jail. She didn't know until the next day that he was missing when she went home.
Okay.
She was in jail overnight.
Okay, and we're good. And so let's. Thank you for that very good description. I just need to ask you some questions to make sure that the listeners maybe have a more complete understanding of all of this. So did they go out there on, you said Saturday, did they go out there on Friday, Saturday, do you know?
They went on Friday.
All right, so they go out there Friday, they stay over till Saturday. She says that Jay went missing first for an hour that Saturday night, and then they came back, and then he came back. This area that they were camping on, is this an actual campground? Is it a state park? Is it private land? Do you know?
It is just an area off of the country road. That you would have a place where you drive down, and just an area right there by the river
Mm-hmm.
where you could camp. So I don't know whether it would be private or public, to be honest. It's not like a campground or anything. It's just a little spot that people go to.
Okay. So, once again, my best description of a state park would be a show up and maybe there's a facilities there, maybe restrooms, maybe there's kind of a grill that if you bring your own charcoal and things you can grill out, nothing like that.
Nothing like that, no.
Okay, so this might have been possibly private land that they were on that maybe the owner didn't even know that they were there, possibly?
Possibly. Yeah, possibly.
Okay. These men that she said showed up, have they ever been located to your knowledge?
No.
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 Okay. All right, so that's her story, and being that Alexandria said that he was driving erratically and maybe they got into an argument, and she gets out of this van that they're in. Did she ever say she was expecting to see Jay again when she got taken to jail? And we'll get into that in a bit. Did she try to call him to come get her when she got out of jail? Where did she think that he was going after, she says that he kicked her or she got out willingly out of the van? Where did she think he was going?
She thought he was going home to the house where they were living.
Okay.
And, yeah.
Okay, and how far, once again, your understanding, how far was where they allegedly camped to where they lived? You can just put it in minutes. How many minutes would it take to drive from where they were camping to where they were living at the time?
10 to 15.
10 to 15 minutes?
Yes.
Okay, so not far.
No.
Not far, but if you were going to walk it, that would be, of course, a lot longer. So 10 to 15 minutes, let's say 12 miles. Okay. So that's what she says, and she says that while she was walking that Sunday morning is when she got picked up, and we'll once again get into that in a bit. To your knowledge, while they were out there camping in this area, has anybody ever come forward since then and said, you know what, I saw or we saw Alexandria and Jay out there camping? Did anybody actually see them out there either Friday, Saturday, or early Sunday?
No one has come forward.
Okay. Let's move on to this. And that's in the story. And once again, we'll get into more details in a moment. Let's talk about Alexandria. She said that that Sunday she was walking and got picked up. What warrants were out for her? What were these charges that caused her to be taken to jail that day?
I think it was contempt of court on outstanding child support. I don't think there was any illegal thing going on with her at that point.
Okay.
It was over child support.
Was she supposed to be paying child support to somebody or?
Yes, she has, I believe, 3 children. I'm not positive, and she was supposed to be paying child support, probably to the state of Kansas, and that's just a guesstimate.
Okay.
But
I guess I'm a little surprised because even in the 21st century, I think that a woman paying for child support is still fairly rare. I'm not trying to be a sexist here, but I think that's fairly rare. So that you say that certainly catches my attention.
In the state of Kansas, if your child goes into foster care and you're a woman, they don't care. You have to pay child support to the state of Kansas.
Okay, so that's the kind of child support you're talking about. Okay.
I believe that's probably what it was, yeah.
Okay, thank you. All right, thank you for explaining that. And so she gets taken to jail. How long is she there? She's seen on Sunday. She gets picked up. How long is she there?
She's there until Monday afternoon.
Okay. All right, so let's move on to this. So Alexandria goes to jail for the next, let's just say, 24 hours. Jay is driven off. She seemingly doesn't try to contact him. He seemingly doesn't try to contact her. It's not the first time that a couple maybe have a blow up and one goes one way and the one goes the other. Do you remember that weekend yourself? You know, what you were doing, and once again, you didn't know that they were going camping, but do you remember that weekend, what you were doing that weekend?
I didn't have any special plans. I stayed home that weekend. I was still, I had just retired. And I remember I did try calling him on Friday. His phone it went straight to voicemail because his phone was shut off. He didn't have minutes. I did call the lady that he was living with, and she said, well, they went someplace. She didn't know where they were.
Okay.
So basically, I was just here in Arkansas at home.
Okay. So you did try to reach Jay on Friday. Couldn't reach him. He had one of those pay-as-you-go phones, which we talk about those seemingly a lot in disappearance cases. You talk to maybe we can just use her first name. What is this woman's name that they were living with? Just her first name, please. Wanda. Okay. So you talked to Wanda. She did say she corroborates the story that they did go somewhere and that they were not there. And did you try to reach Jay the rest of that weekend or not?
I don't believe I did. I may have. Usually if I called and didn't get an answer, I would give it 24 hours and call again, probably every day until I got a hold of him. I tried to contact him every week.
Okay. Do you remember any other times when you were trying to reach him that they might have been camping when you talked to Jay? And once again, I understand that it sounds like your relationship was a little bit strained for obvious reasons. But did he ever say, oh, yeah, Alexandria and I went camping this weekend? Did that ever come up in any conversations you had with him?
It did.
Okay.
It didn't a lot, but, yeah, or we have plans. We're going to go out to the river.
Okay. All right, so it was common enough that he had mentioned it to you, and maybe that might even have been running through your head. Maybe I should just ask you, when Wanda said that they weren't there and they went somewhere, do you think it was possible that they went camping that weekend?
No, that didn't even enter my mind.
Oh, okay. All right.
I don't think it happened enough that he had said it to me a lot. You know.
Okay.
When you have an addict in your family, you don't know where they are.
Right. Of course.
And I got to the place that I just didn't even hardly speculate. I just waited until he showed up. Yeah. And I knew he was safe again. You spend a lot of your time just assuring yourself that they're safe and they're alive.
Yeah.
I don't know if that might sound crazy, but that's what happened.
No, it's not crazy at all. You spend a lot of time on pins and needles.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right, so how did you find out that your son was missing?
Alexandria called me. I can't remember if it was, I think it was when she got out of jail. It was. When she got out of jail, she called me and said that he had not made it home the night before. And what should she do? And I said, well, is this common? Does he do this? Because when he was in Arkansas, I know he would come up missing one or two nights. It wasn't too uncommon. And anyway, I ended up advising her, you need to go ahead and report it to the police and tell them that he did not make it back. And I think she waited until the next day and reported it.
So Tuesday now. So we have to maybe remind the listeners that Sunday she gets out of the van and she goes her way, he goes his way. she gets seen by this cop. It's some sort of crazy coincidence, and she's just walking along the road. The police officer stops. She has this warrant, gets taken to jail, and then there's Monday. She gets out. She talks to you, and then Tuesday she finally talks to the police about this report. Do you have any idea of how she knew that Jay was missing? Does that mean like she went home and he wasn't there, or she was trying to call him? Do you know?
Yes. Wanda picked her up in Chanute, the neighboring town, took her home, and told her, when she took her home, that Jay had not made it home the night before. And he still wasn't there.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds fairly reasonable to me. Okay, and so she called you, and did she sound worried or just confused? Did she think maybe that Jay had gone to see you in Arkansas? What do you think she was thinking?
Well, that is one of the questions she asked me. Have you seen Jay? Is he there?
Okay.
And I said, no. And then she got angry. She was mad because he hadn't come home.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, the emotions. Then she was crying because he hadn't come home. She's very emotional.
Okay. At that point, when you talked to her and she let you know, did she at that point explain to you what happened the day before? Is that when you found out about him going on his way, her going her way? Is that when she told you that?
She told me a little bit at that time. She didn't go into any detail. She just said that they'd gotten into an argument. He had let her out. She told him to let her out. Mm-hmm. And he let her out, took off, and she got picked up by the police. And that's basically all she told me.
Okay. So she files this police report on Tuesday explaining what happened. And do the police once again, at that point, that week, what do the police do?
Well, actually, there's not a report filed. She contacted the police and told them. And but there's not an official report made for quite some time. Okay,
let's talk about that. So she calls them just saying he's not around, but they didn't go to where she was living. She didn't get a ride down there to fill out any paperwork at that time, really.
No, they did not request it. I don't think they really did anything. I called them a day or two later, the police, in Chanute, and said, what's going on? I want to know what's going on. And so I think at that point they took it seriously. She's known for her drug use, and we're talking about small towns. She's known for her drug use.
Yes.
So I don't think they took it real serious. And so when I called, they went ahead and did a BOLO, put out a BOLO, and they did call around to hospitals, mental hospitals, because I was concerned at that point about suicide.
Huh. Why is that? If I can ask, we're doing this interview, so I have to ask those questions. Why did suicide jump into your mind?
Because he had attempted suicide once or twice, and when he would get super upset, he would threaten suicide. And with people that do that, you think they may become successful someday.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and we have to remember, not only is he missing, but the van is missing. So it's be on the lookout for the van. And was this Jay's van? Was it Alexandria's van? Whose van was it?
It belonged to Jay and Wanda. She bought the van, and he was paying her for it, buying it. But when they bid it, they bought it in both their names.
Okay. All right, so maybe we could ask this right now. When was an official report filed out, the paperwork? When was that done?
About 2 weeks later, I finally went, because I didn't know an official report had not been done. I had called his father and requested that he go to the police station and file an official missing report. Long story short, that didn't happen. And I ended up going back to Iola, which is where the case was transferred to after the van was found, because the van was found in a different county than he came up missing in.
Okay.
So at that point, I went to Iola and I filled out the missing paperwork.
Okay. So, and if you mentioned, so you, the police are be on the lookout, and so let's move on to this, being that you mentioned that the van was eventually found. Where was it found, and can you describe the location of where it was found?
It was found in a field, well, next to a field, pulled off of a country road. It was 1700 Road, I believe, and Arizona Road, a corner, and then there's a little path like, and it was backed in there off of the road next to a grove of trees, like it was being hidden. You could see it from the road, but not real well.
Okay.
Because it was backed by a grove of trees.
All right. We have to remember, once again, this is near the intersection of 1700 Road, so 1700 Road, and Arizona Road in the state of Kansas.
Mm-hmm.
And what county is that?
Allen, Allen, Allen County.
Okay, so people can look that up on the map. And once again, I will be doing a couple different maps for this particular disappearance. How was the van found? And maybe I should ask this, when was it found?
It was found 10 days later, on the 23rd.
Okay, and who found it?
The owner of the property was going to check his soybean field, and he discovered it and called the police.
All right. Okay, so it's found in, and how did you find out that it was found? Did the police call you? Did Alexandria call you? How'd you find out?
The police did not call me. Wanda called me.
Wanda did.
And, yeah, Wanda did, and also his stepmother, because she heard that there were helicopters and police and lights. It was, near dark time, and so by the time they were done, it was dark. Someone had called her and told her, and so, of course, we assumed it was Jay. We didn't know. Okay. But then the police contacted Wanda, and so then she called me and let me know the van had been found.
Okay. The way you understand it, how far was the van found away from where Alexandra said that she got out of the van? How far?
2.5 miles.
Okay. Now, we also we haven't talked about this, but Alexandria had a sister who lived in that area. Yeah. And what was the address of her house? Maybe the listeners want to look that up too. It was 22,200, right? 22,200?
Yes, Harper Road.
Okay. And that's once again also in the state of Kansas, and that is also Allen County?
Yes.
All right. So for the listeners again, Alexandria's sister lived at 22, or maybe she does to this day, 22, let's just do it this way, 22200 Harper Road in Allen County, Kansas. And the van was found at near the intersection of 1700 Road and Arizona Road in Kansas, also in Allen County, Texas, or Allen County, Kansas.
Yes.
Okay. And it's not far away. 2.5 miles. Not far away. Okay. And what was the condition of the van when it was found? What was in it? What was outside of it? What was the condition of it?
The van was fine. It showed no signs of anybody, a wreck or anything like that. There was a flat tire. It had a flat tire. It was on gas. There was nothing different about the inside. The police didn't even open up the door and look in it. But his keys were still in the ignition. His driver's license was in there, his ATM card, his wallet, and his phone. He had none of those things with him. So that's what they found inside. And outside, there were a few items that had to been taken out of the back end of the van. Some clothing, socks, I think, and the charcoal grill that they took with them everywhere. Just one of those little two-people grills, a tiny one. But it had been taken out.
Okay. Since then, have you ever been told that anything was missing from the van? Any damage to the van? Like you said, there was a flat tire, which catches my attention. But anything that anybody said was unusual about the van?
No, but the van was released within 2 hours back to Wanda, which put it again, the police didn't check it.
No.
So, no.
Yeah, that's very common. I have to say, I seem to say that as much as anything else on this program when cars are involved in disappearances, that most of the time a vehicle is given back to a family or the owner, whoever, within 24 hours of it being found. That is, I'm not saying that's right, but that is certainly not unusual. Okay. Did you say the gas was in it?
There was some gas in it, not a lot. They were low on gas, but they probably had enough to get home.
Okay. All right, so the van is found. It sounds like it was found a little bit by accident, even though there was a be on the lookout for Jay and the van. It was not a police officer or somebody looking for Jay that found it. It was a farmer who just happened to be going out to look at his field and saw the van and called it in, which, of course, was the proper thing to do. Now, it was returned back to Wanda, and what did Wanda do with the van?
She kept it for a while and would loan it out to her family members, and then for some reason she sold it for junk, and it was destroyed.
How long would you say that that van existed after Jay disappeared before it was junked? Any idea at all?
No, not really, because I didn't know it had been junked until, a year later. I said something to someone about the van, probably Alexandria, and she said, well, it's gone. Wanda got rid of it. I said, well, who bought it? And it was like, well, she sold it for junk.
How many times did you get to talk to Wanda after Jay disappeared?
Many times. She's a family member.
Oh, she is.
She's a family friend. I said that wrong. She's a family friend.
She is a family friend. And since you say that you talked to her several times, are you then saying that she never told you that she had the van junked?
No, she never said anything about it.
And since when you did find out, did you ever talk to her about that?
No.
Okay.
I did talk. I did talk to her about it, and she just said that she junked it because it wasn't worth much, and she didn't want to make anyone in her family mad because she sold it to this one and didn't sell it to that one. So she just junked it.
In talking to Wanda this several times, did you ever, ask her, maybe we should kind of, I don't know, put it off to the side for a little while in case Jay's, I'm not trying to be morbid here, but just as an example, Jay is found and there might be foul play that maybe the van should be set off to the side. Did that discussion ever come up with Wanda?
I don't believe it did. I would just assume that she would not do something like that she would, because we talked about the fact that something foul play could have happened, or he, something down those lines. I'm sure I wasn't specific about it, but I think I just assumed that she wouldn't get rid of it.
But she did.
And she did eventually, yes.
Okay, and not only that, but she allowed other people to use it.
Yes.
Okay. All right. In talking to Wanda, did she ever offer up any opinion of her own about what could have happened to Jay?
No, not really. She was just like the rest of us, no idea. He just vanished, and she wouldn't have any clue either. Mm-hmm. We talked about a lot of different scenarios, whether the girlfriend did something, whether he fell down and got hurt and couldn't get back up again. Lots of things. Okay. We did talk about several scenarios, but she didn't really express an opinion.
Okay. Well, being that the van was found 10 days later, any searches done once it was found in that immediate area? And if so, who did them?
Okay, the first search would have been the day it was found, that evening. The police did get their little drone out and went over the area with that a little bit. They said they had four-wheelers out there, but there was no evidence from what I was told by other people that the ground, it was in August, so the weeds would have been high. Had you gone through with four-wheelers, the weeds would have been knocked down. But they said they had four-wheelers out there. And I know they said that there were a lot of people had told me there were a lot of lights out there, so they were out there after dark. Okay. And they said they searched, but not a large area, not a big area.
Okay. And you said that was the first search. What about the searches after that?
Then Jay's stepmother got her family together, and they went out. They had four-wheelers and I think maybe a horse or two, and they searched a good mile area around the van, but didn't discover anything at all. And that was a short time after he was found, and actually they said that it didn't look like anybody had searched before them. And a couple weeks later, she and her father and another man took a boat down the river looking for him and went to the dam, wherever that is. And the water was down by then because they thought, possibly he had gone into the water and might be at the dam. But nothing did any good. I think the Fish and Game Commission at some point went down the river. I was never told for positive whether that happened or not. I know it was supposed to. And then Texas EquiSearch, 5 of those nice ladies went out and looked once for him. Okay. So there's been a few searches. Okay.
I want to talk about the river search for a moment. Now, my understanding, once again, having looked at the maps, is that where the van was found was not next to a river. The river, correct? Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. So what they're saying is that they searched the river, so there may be the possibility that Jay started walking, and he walked quite a distance to get to the river and might have gone into the river. That's why they searched it.
Yes.
Okay. I just want to make sure the listeners understand, maybe ones that don't have access to a map, that the van was not found next to a river. They might have camped next to a river, but the van was not found next to a river.
Correct. Okay. Several miles away.
Okay. All right, so some searches were done. Nothing's found, not just Jay himself, but nothing that could be connected to him. The way you maybe could explain to listeners, if you were there, would this be a really tough area to search? Swampy or really thick underbrush, or how would you explain this area of Kansas?
The searchers that I talked to, that know about it say it is a hard area to search because you do have some dense trees. The river itself, there's a lot of steep banks and boulders that you have to get up and down to search. And it's just such a vast area that he could be, because he was still able to walk 5, maybe 6 miles on his own if he was able to walk, if that's what happened.
Sure.
And so, yeah, it is a difficult terrain, even though it is Kansas and everybody thinks of it as flat. You have a lot of underbrush, lots of underbrush in the summertime. Snakes. Yeah, lots of snakes in that area.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's difficult to get out there and do a big search unless you have a lot of people.
Okay. All right, so nothing is found during these searches. Have you personally, and maybe the police have, but I want to know, have you personally ever talked to the owner of the land where the van was found?
No, I have not. I don't know his name. I was never given that info.
Okay. Your understanding about these searches, would you say that this owner was happy to help? Was he more than accommodating for people that wanted to go search on his land, or have you heard something different than that?
No, from what I was told, he was very accommodating.
Okay.
He had no problem with it at all.
Okay, and we have to remember that this is 2.5 years ago. I'm guessing that he's still doing his soybean planting there, or whatever else he has on his land. And I'm guessing if he ran across anything that could be connected to Jay's disappearance, that he would have come forward. I'm guessing, right?
That would be my assumption, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that, of course,
I have no reason to think that he would be involved in anything and not report it.
Okay, great. I want to talk about this, being that this van was found 2.5 miles away from where Alexandria's sister lived, and they were camping coincidentally near there. Has Alexandria herself ever identified the exact place where they were camping that weekend?
She has. It took a while, but she did get that information to AccuSearch, one of the searchers.
Okay.
And probably to the police. I don't think she hid it from the police.
Okay. Because I have to ask, because I know I asked you that before, and you were under that she had not. Did that? Are you changing your opinion on that?
Maybe I misunderstood your question before.
Okay. Well, that's always possible. Yeah. All right. I guess what I'm asking is there any proof that they were camping down by the river that weekend? Any proof of it, or just Alexandria's word?
I think it's Alexandria's word, and now since a new theory has come up and some new information has come to light, the sister was there with them, and the sister's boyfriend. And so they would be corroborating the story that they were camping.
Okay. So is this and we mentioned back when we first started talking about Alexandria, is this one of those things where her story has changed a little bit since the day that Jay disappeared?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
The original story, and then every so often something would be added or taken away. What she says is she would remember things, and timelines are not good for her because of the meth use, which I guess is pretty common. And but she has come up with something almost totally different this last time.
Okay. I guess the reason I'm asking you that is because, as you've already stated, the van was found 2.5 miles from where her sister lives. You said that the van had a flat tire. You said that the grill for that they had was sitting outside The van, I guess I could be convinced in a certain way that that's actually where they camped, which was nowhere near the river.
That's possible.
Okay. All right. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't hearing things here. Okay. Thank you. Because it seems to me, being that, you know, they were looking for Jay, that she would have been able to take police or somebody, you know, down to the river, and there might be, if they started a campfire or something, you know, there would be remains. See this campfire right here? See this charred piece of ground? This is where we were, etc. Has she ever done anything like that?
No.
So to your once again, to your knowledge.
No. Yeah, not to my knowledge.
Okay. We already talked about Jay's phone not having any minutes on it. You tried to call him, and it was going straight to voicemail. Have you ever heard anything about Alexandria's cell phone for that weekend?
She did not have one, is my understanding.
Okay. Okay. So we can't use any ping information. We don't no proof that she couldn't call anybody because she seemingly didn't have a phone. So this is one of these rare 21st century disappearances where we don't have any cell phone information to go off of. That's somewhat rare. Okay. What you had told me that, of course, this is the changing stories that Alexandria has had. You, of course, said that she got picked up walking on the side of the road. Did she say that she made it to her sister's and then was walking away from her sister's, or was she walking to her sister's when this happened?
The original story was the sister wasn't included in the original story.
Okay.
But at this time, the last time I talked to Alexandria, she had admitted that the sister and the boyfriend were also at the river partying that weekend, and when he let her out Sunday morning, she walked to her sister's house and was there for 15 or 20 minutes, and they told her she had to leave because they had big drug people coming. And so she started walking again to Chanute, and that's when she was picked up, which is not what her original story was at all.
Please, if you could recite her original story once again, the way you understand it, which she told you originally.
The original story was no one was at the river partying with them at any time. And so her sister wasn't mentioned at any time in the beginning. And when they left, it was just the two of them. She was walking down the road and got picked up. Nothing was said about her going to her sister's house. But suddenly she went to her sister's house, and they didn't let her stay because they had people coming. So she was, and this is what she said. She wondered if he came back for her. And knowing that her sister was close, went to the sister's house in the midst of all this.
Okay, so what you're saying is that Alexandria herself at some point offered up her own theory as to what could have happened to Jay.
Yes.
Okay, and please state what her theory could be, what her theory is again, what she once again, she told you this. What did she say?
She said that she wonders if he went back to the house, her sister's house, and something was going on, and he walked in on a drug deal or something, and they hurt him.
So what she is saying is that, of course, once again, she's had a couple different stories, but just to generalize, she and Jay are together. At some point, they get separated, whether he kicks her out of the van or she gets out willingly. She starts to her sister. She allegedly gets to her sister's. Then she walks away from it because there's going to be quote-unquote, drug people coming to the house. And then her theory is that at some point Jay went to the sister's house looking for her and walked in on something.
Yes, that was her last theory.
That was her last theory. Before she came up with that theory, back at the time of the disappearance, did she ever voice any other theories?
Sure, she had many theories. Maybe he fell down and hit his head. Maybe he took off across a field somewhere and fell down and couldn't get up, hurt himself with his back like it is. At one point, I can't remember. That's all I can think of.
Okay.
But she and I would talk, of course, and try to figure out where to look or what happened.
Okay. And listeners know we do not do theorizing on the interviews. I don't do any theorizing on the program. The guests don't do any theorizing. But if somebody who was there when the person disappeared is going to do some theorizing, then of course we do talk about them, and that's why I'm asking you about some of these things that Alexandria said. I think they might have might be helpful, might have some there might be some insight there. Have you ever personally talked to Alexandria's sister about Jay's disappearance?
No.
Okay. Do you know if this sister has ever spoken to the police? Has the police spoken to her? Has it ever gotten maybe back through the grapevine of what she has said about Jay's disappearance at all?
They have spoken to her. I finally talked them into talking to her. It took quite a while, maybe 6 months after all this happened. Mm-hmm. And they did finally contact her and interview her, which nothing came of that. And then when Alexandria came up with this theory, we talked Alexandria into calling the detective, Iola detective, and the sister was in jail at the time in Chanute, and Alexandria called them and requested that they go interview her, and gave him this theory. And he emailed me and said that he was going to see if he could go talk to her. And according to Alexandria, he did talk to the sister, but he has not answered any of my emails of how that interview went.
Interesting. Okay, well, that is certainly something I think that you have to keep reminding him of. I think that certainly would be interesting, being that Alexandria herself is going to include her sister as being a person who was there that weekend, or she went over there. Yes, certainly we need to know what Alexandria's sister's story is. Is she going to admit that she and her man were with them down at the river partying and camping, or is she going to say, nope, we weren't with them, we were at home, and then Alexandria showed up? It's certainly important to know what she said. Certainly.
Yeah.
That's certainly important. And maybe doesn't sound like she's a very good person. Being she was in jail, maybe her man or boyfriend, whoever it is, maybe he has his own set of problems too. Maybe they should get a statement from him as well.
I don't even know who the boyfriend was. Nobody seems to be able to get that information. So I'm sure the sister's boyfriend has never been interviewed.
Huh. Okay.
Anytime you ask those questions, you get it, I don't know.
Okay. Sherry, are you saying that in talking to Alexandria, has she never even mentioned who her sister's boyfriend is?
No, she has not, and I think she may have maybe referred to him once, but I'm going to think that she only knows him by his first name.
Okay. All right. I guess that's certainly possible. Not sure how close she and her sister are. Okay. We're just going to have to let that answer stand for now. Just knows the guy's first name. Now, Alexandria at some point did bring up the issue of a hot shot. When did she bring this up?
Oh, several months. Well, I think she brought it up to my ex-husband, and his wife hired a private investigator to interview her, and I think she told him. I think, and that was probably 3 to 4 months after he came up missing.
And we're not going to mention the private investigator's name, but is she saying that she gave Jay a hot shot before they got in the car and this all happened, or the night before? How precise was she in this description?
When she talked to me about it, she said he requested it that morning before they left the river. And she didn't want to give it to him, but she did.
Okay. But she had never mentioned that before. Once again, you talked to her several times right after Jay disappeared. She never mentioned that in those times?
No.
Okay. You mentioned this private investigator. We're not going to mention his name. But how did he find out about Jay's disappearance? Was he helpful in any way, and did he ever offer up his own theory as to what happened to Jay?
He found out about it through Jay's stepmother. She contacted him, and they made arrangements. I helped. Alexandria at that time was in Oklahoma. I helped get her back to Kansas, and then got them all together. Everyone got together, and he interviewed her with me around and in private also. Mm-hmm. And he at one point he came out of the stepmother's home and said, "We're going to go get him. We know exactly where he is. She's going to take us to him."
Is that right?
And yes. And then they went out to the river, and she did not take him anywhere. And her claim was she didn't say that she knew where he was. She said they were telling her to theorize where he was. But I've never heard the tape. I don't know what was said and what context anything was said in. But his theory is she gave him the hot shot. He started hallucinating. At some point, they got out of the van. Jay walked off and sat down under a tree, and he was gone, and she left him there. She would have had to move the van because it supposedly happened at the river.
And so are we then to believe that Jay's, once again, under this theory, that Jay's remains are still just out there somewhere and nobody's seen them?
Yes.
Okay. Did you say that this private investigator taped that conversation?
Yes, he said that he taped that he always taped his conversations, but he has not given any tapes, any information to my ex-husband and his wife.
Any explanation for that?
No. He is not communicating. He left town without telling anyone, I believe, when he went back home. He went out, searched for Jay that night, took her out there after dark, took Alexandria out there after dark, and tried to get her to, again, tell him where Jay was. And she kept telling him she didn't know. And he left that morning, the day after he talked to her.
And never, even though he recorded all of this stuff behind the scenes, he never gave your ex-husband and his wife the recording of those conversations.
My understanding is he left town and did not give them any kind of a written report as to what was said. I know he never gave them tapes, no kind of a report. He took their money and left.
Okay. And that's the reason we're not going to use his name, because we're just not going to get into that. Okay. Right. I know, you know, of course, who he is. I know who he is, and we're just going to leave it at that. Okay, so,
Yeah.
and that's the last that this private investigator had anything to do with Jay's disappearance?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Have there been any recent developments in Jay's disappearance, or would you say that all of the information that is, that we've talked about here has pretty much come out, just in those weeks after he disappeared in 2017?
There has been nothing, absolutely nothing, since the disappearance.
Okay.
No leads, none of the addicts that he associated with, no one has anything to say other than he vanished.
What has Alexandria done with her life since this all happened?
Oh, well, she's been she's still not working. She was with another man within a week, living with him, I think, in 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks. Spent probably a year with him. Moved to Oklahoma at one point. I think she's been in rehab a time or two. I think she just got out of rehab again. So basically her life really hasn't changed much. It's just still pretty much the same.
Okay. The last 2.5 years, I realize that it's been horrible, and we have to remember this is your only son. But I asked this of all of the family members who are on the program. What has the last 2.5 years been like for you, Sherry?
Oh, it's a roller coaster. You're good one day, you're fine. You put things in perspective. Then the next day is you just miss him. I just want to hear his voice. Yeah. It's nuts. I hate drugs. Hate them.
Yeah.
And I just hope, I said right after it happened, and I knew that he wasn't going to be coming back. I just hope something good comes of this. And fortunately, something did. His cousin is the one that sold him the 8-ball and admitted that to me and called me. And about 6 months later, he got clean and is still clean.
Wow.
Got a job, went to work. He's a functioning citizen now. And that's hard sometimes too. I'm happy, but it's hard.
Yeah. I meant to ask you something back when we were talking about where the van was found. Of course, we talked about that Jay, of course, had all these surgeries, but they sounded like they were mainly on his upper body, shoulder, back, etc. But of course, we also talked about him falling down a lot, etc. How far if he did park that van there and walked off, how far do you think that he could have walked? Given his physical ability.
He was still a strong person physically. It's mostly his skeletal. If he didn't fall down and get hurt, he could walk 4 or 5 miles a little bit at a time. He could walk maybe a half a mile without having to stop. So I think it's reasonable to think he could walk 4 or 5 miles in a relatively short time.
And given that, do you think that the searches were done, these searches that were done, do you think that the searches accounted for that? Do you think that the searches were done? Did they go out as far as, at least 2 or 3 miles in every direction or not?
No. No, we have not been able to get enough searchers to do that. Like I said, the terrain is rough. It takes a long time to do even a square mile there. Kansas is laid out in squares. Yeah. You go a mile north, a mile east, a mile south, a mile west. But a lot of those areas are just, like I said, so overgrown with weeds and vines and those types of things. That it does make it slow. And no, but we've never been able to cover that much area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, and of course, a mile doesn't sound like a very long distance, but then you say a mile in any direction, and suddenly you're talking about a very large area, a large circle.
Yeah.
Just for a mile, then you get up to 2 miles, and the area increases exponentially. You go twice as far, but it's 4 times as big an area to cover. So, yeah, even a mile in any direction can be daunting. Even if you have 200, 300 people, still very difficult. And then you add in the terrain on top of it. Yeah.
And I think our biggest group that went out was 5.
That's going to be very, very difficult. Yes. Okay. It is the thing that's still, and I don't know, I don't have it in my notes here, but the thing that still continues to stick out to me is this flat tire. What are the odds that they would go camping, and then if it did happen, as Alexandra said, she got out of the van. What are the odds that a tire would go flat right after she gets out of the van? Yeah, I'm gonna have to think about that. But I don't think that's something you mentioned to me before. But I'm certainly I know the listeners are gonna be thinking a lot about it as well. I don't know what to think of that. And just hard to believe they were riding around with a flat tire. I guess that's what I'm saying.
Well, I know they were having trouble with the tire because he had mentioned that to me. That he had a tire that was losing air. And he did need to get that fixed. I don't know how they would have kept it aired up if he had one that was leaking. How did he keep it aired up if they stayed at the river the whole time?
Yeah. Could have been a slow leak. You put 35 pounds in it, maybe it would lose like 5 pounds a day or something. And I've had cars that have had that issue. You just keep pumping it back up. So I've been there. And very well could be that when the van was parked there that the tire was pumped up, and then once it was found, it was flat. I guess he might have been, maybe it could have happened that way. Okay. Thank you for pointing it out. So he did mention to you that he was having some vehicle problems with a tire?
Yes. Yeah. The week before, 2 weeks before. Of course, he never had money to get anything fixed. Everything had to go for the drugs.
Okay. Do you have a website or a Facebook page set up for Jay's disappearance?
Yes, there's actually some people have set up several of them.
All right. Well, please tell the listeners about them right now. Take your time. If you need to look them up or if you have a list of them, please let everybody know what those are.
One is the main one. The biggest one is Justice for Jay.
Okay, and that's a Facebook page, Facebook group.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was set up by one of his friends. I have several groups that have also gotten his name out there, but that's the one that's in his name.
Okay. Any others that you'd like to talk about in this interview?
No, not really. That would be the main one to go to.
Okay.
Justice for Jay.
Justice for Jay on Facebook.
Yeah.
Okay, and by the
if
time
anybody makes any comments on it, I get a notification on that one.
Okay. Great. Thank you. Any last words before we complete this interview, Sherry?
Not really. I just hope that the word will get around and people will smarten up and quit abusing these drugs. It's deadly. It's deadly. It's awful. These things can happen to anyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I take it from these comments that you're very surprised that your son got into these drugs, given the other things he was doing at the time when that happened, that he got into them.
Yes, he wasn't a child. He wasn't young. You think that only 18, 19, 20-year-olds are going to do this or younger. He was an intelligent person and knew exactly what was in meth and still did it. I asked him why, and he said, I was curious. He's 28. I think he was about 28, actually, when he started using. But he was curious. And so, no, he was about 30. But he did it because he was curious. And you don't think about 30-year-olds doing that.
No, you don't.
No, by then you think that they're old enough that they're not going to make that kind of a decision when it comes to this type of drug. The opioids, we all understand how that happens with the surgeries and all that. But meth is a different beast.
Yeah.
And I just can't, it blows my mind that he got involved with that at the age that he did. Because he was no longer at the vulnerable age, or what you consider vulnerable, what I consider vulnerable. It just blows my mind.
Okay. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I just hope somebody will listen to this and if they're thinking about doing something like that or becoming involved in a crowd that is doing it, I hope that they'll stop and think, it really can happen to me.
I think we hear about that a lot on the program. As you know, I don't personally know any of the people who have disappeared that we've covered for the program, but I hear that a lot from people who are on the program, that whether it is a mother or father or a friend, or oftentimes they are very surprised, knowing the person the way they did, that person ended up getting into drugs. We seem to hear that a lot. In contrast to, maybe the opposite that would be, well, this guy, he was always getting into trouble. He got in trouble in school. He was a juvenile. He got doing a lot of things, making a lot of other bad choices, in his life. And then he made the bad choice of getting into drugs. It doesn't seem like we hear that as much on Unfound as we hear about, if you'd have told me that this person was going to become an addict, I would have, been totally surprised, but it happened.
Jay was never one to get in trouble. He was never one to cause trouble. He was always the quiet guy. Even in high school, everybody says he was the quiet guy, the nice guy. He had lots of lady friends in high school. Not so much girlfriends, but lady friends that went to him with their, problems. He was a good guy. He worked hard. He was a responsible citizen for a long time. He drank and he would smoke pot occasionally, but nothing that would make you believe that he would end up like this, addicted to meth. I want to thank you for doing this.
Okay, you're very welcome. And I appreciate you being on this episode of Unfound.
Well, I just hope it helps someone out there somewhere.
I hope so too. I share that. I share that hope as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was my interview with Sherry Russell, mother of Dennis, a.k.a. Jay Lushbough. I thank her for joining me and all of you on the program. The problem with this kind of disappearance, so not just this one, is that when you only have one person's version of events, and that person may have a reason to lie, once again, may have a reason, that person has a strong addiction, that person has a criminal record, that person can't seem to keep her story straight. The problem is anything is possible. Everything from Jay really did drop her off after camping and something happened to him all on his own, from that extreme to the other extreme, that they didn't go camping at all, that they really didn't have a disagreement, that Jay disappeared due to multiple people's actions, and he was the victim. I'm not theorizing here. I'm just telling you how I process the information presented in the interview with Sherry. Truly, anything is possible in this particular disappearance. So then, what is there to pick out from the interview that might lead us in a direction? The point that jumps out to me is Alexandria saying she gave Jay a hot shot not long before he disappeared. While everything else she has said certainly excludes her from the disappearance, this statement about the hot shot is exactly the opposite. In fact, I think it is the only comment that Sherry knows about that could suggest Alexandria knows more than she is saying, that could suggest Alexandria knows what happened, but doesn't want to say. We've heard about hot shots before on Unfound, and every time we've talked about them, it's been in the context that a hot shot was used to kill a missing person. Some of those other disappearances? Rebecca Henderson, Jamie Bowen, Leah Peebles, Shanna Boydo, and that's just to name a few. What do you notice about that list? Yep, no men. I'm not saying there hasn't been at least one or two male disappearances where the discussion of hotshots has come up, but I can say with quite a bit of confidence that we discuss hotshots much more in regards to women with addictions who disappear than their male counterparts. Why is that? I don't know. I mean, it's not like men don't die from overdoses. They do. In fact, way more than women, because more men have drug addictions than women. Yet, I can't explain why hotshots come up more in Unfound's female disappearances than the male ones. So, back to Alexandria's statement. It's hard to believe someone would make something up that could potentially kill someone, especially if that someone is now missing. So I'm inclined to believe Alexandria. The problem? Just because she calls it a quote-unquote hotshot doesn't mean it was. And it doesn't mean it could kill Jay. Really, all a quote-unquote hotshot means is that it was a higher dose than Jay usually took. That's all. That doesn't mean it was lethal. However, a hotshot could have caused Jay to have other reactions. Maybe hallucinations that caused him to walk away from his van. Maybe a kind of amnesia also causing him to walk off. What's my best guess? I can't help but think Alexandria's comment was a window into her conscience. Meaning, she doesn't know what happened to Jay, but she can't help but think that something she did could have caused his disappearance. Very possible. One more thing before you begin to analyze Jay's disappearance. And this takes us back to last week's in memoriam for Crystal Morrison. We thought someone gave her a hot shot. Most of us, including myself, were pretty sure drugs and or murder was involved. But we now know most of us were wrong. Crystal walked off and died in nearby woods. So since that was the result for her disappearance, then it could certainly be true for Jay's. Then it would mean Alexandria's story and her last sight are totally true. I'll leave the rest of the theorizing up to you. And that's the program. If you found it informative, please go to the app that you use to listen to Unfound and give this podcast a nice review. I thank you for listening. I'm Ed Densel, and you've been listening to Unfound.